Hello and welcome to Hobby Hangout. Hi guys.
Hello, hello.
We have a very special episode today. Normally it's just myself, Dave, and Gretchen painting along, but today we have special guests Chris and John from Modiphius. Thank you guys for joining us today.
Hello.
On our Hobby Hangout. Normally we paint, but today we're going to be able to be talking about some really exciting product coming from Modiphius, a new sort of box. And let me introduce Chris. He is the founder of Modiphius, and then John is the head of creative services. So thank you guys so much for joining us.
Thanks very much for having us.
Yeah.
Happy to have you. And for us, it's the afternoon, but for you guys, it's the evening, I believe, correct?
Yeah, 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock. So, time to start painting, right? It's perfect painting hour.
Yeah, yeah.
Very nice, very nice.
It's always the perfect painting hour.
Well,
That's just me. Maybe.
Yeah, that's what, Dave, you call your box of, it's not your shelf of shame, it's your shelf of opportunity or
Box of
something.
opportunity, yeah. Or basement of opportunity.
yeah.
Very nice. So on our show at Hobby Hangout, we usually try and work on some different projects. So Dave, what have you been working on recently?
I've been doing some more work painting up some Chaos Knights. So the ones I've been building all through May, finally getting some paint on them. And been messing around with some rust streaks.
Oh, nice.
So this was the first model I got to try it on. So you can see it on some of the
Oh, very cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Right on the stickers.
yep.
Stickers. I meant decals. I know.
But,
I apologize.
Yeah. So just messing around with those.
Cool.
They're not toys, Leona.
I know.
Definitely not toys.
They're not toys, they're
Don't
miniatures.
play with those.
They're
Those
toys.
are-
Absolutely toys. Come on. We love to play with our toy soldiers. It's fine.
Exactly.
And so, Gretchen, what have you been working on?
So I finished up my Galaxy Dragon that I was working on last time and kind of experimenting with. So today I am going to be working on, oh goodness, I cannot pronounce them to save my life. The bug people.
Oh,
The bug
cool.
people.
Great.
That I never know how to pronounce because I don't think I've actually heard people pronounce it in person, but like once. Every other time they've been mentioned, it's been typed to me.
Maybe that's because they don't know how to pronounce it either. Don't worry.
But yes, I'm gonna work on the bug people, and it'll be fun. I got my base coat down already, so
Nice. They're little fast, quick paint jobs. So Chris and John, what are you guys going to be talking to us about today? What's your current work in progress?
Gosh, a lot. We've got this little. Yeah.
Okay, Chris, you've been exploring something quite interesting. You've been on a new hobby tangent recently, haven't you?
Oh yeah, no, I've got into 3D printing, so I've got myself a Creality 10S Pro 3D printer, and I'm not a hobbyist really, so I'm a wargamer since I was a kid, but I'm not really a modeler because I always used to use too much glue, and then a Airfix Spitfire just drooped because I went a bit too crazy. So anyway, so I've kind of had this frustrating relationship with this machine on the desk in the spare bedroom. Watched lots of videos, kind of figured it out, mate. Thought I got this leveling right, and then the thing tried to grind itself into the the base plate because I'd tried to set this leveling that had already been fixed. So I was like, no. And anyway, kind of got this new software called Simplify 3D, which is just amazing because it just works first time. Anyway, so I've been test printing a lot of our Red Rocket Fallout scenery and some cool new stuff for Elder Scrolls that we're just testing, and And it's amazing. Once it's working, it's literally been burning itself to death. It's my revenge for it not working for the first couple of weeks. But it's been just churning out this whole Red Rocket scenic set, but particularly this new Elder Scrolls set. It's actually helped us because we go, well, actually that looks too big, and so I can print it at different scales and go, well, this should be the scale we recommend. And also I'm going to do a little video about it because I'm kind of, coming at it not from an expert. I know exactly what I'm doing. And I don't have 5,000 hours to fiddle around with it, but kind of like average Joe, I just want to get a 3D printer that works. And I don't want to have to learn every, oh, well, if you change this setting by 1 degree and reduce this by 1 mil, it will work better, or even just work. It's a bit, I liken it to getting a color printer and having to figure out the settings, how to print blue, let alone full color. And then it prints off and the ink falls off the paper because you didn't set the right paper setting and stuff. That's how frustrating it can be. But oh my gosh, when you've set it printing all night and you've got this little bunch of walls in the morning, it's like Santa Claus came in overnight, and
the little cool elves
stuff. Yeah. So and of course it's the mad hobby that you just like. Now I literally go, oh, I'll put that size in, try that, save, press the button, off we go, and come back. I mean, it's currently printing a load of interesting new stuff that's taking 11 hours. So you occasionally go and check on it, and it's a bit like watching the kettle boil. But yeah, it's a brave new world. And now I've discovered all these sites with awesome 3D print files and designers doing interesting little tile sets and dungeons and all kinds of cool stuff. And you're like, oh, I could make all this stuff, So yeah, brilliant fun.
That's awesome. I know Dave always said like miniature painting is one hobby and then 3D printing is a separate hobby, and he doesn't have both of them.
Yeah.
100% Dave on that one.
Yeah, and I'm only doing what's called it's an FDM printer, so it prints in PLA, which is basically a spool of plastic that melts, and so it's great for doing scenery. The guys at Fat Dragon Games have shown people how to make little actual miniatures with it. But if you want to do miniatures, you've got to get the slightly smellier and not so nice material to deal with, resin printers, which can do your beautiful little figurines. But for making scenery, John wouldn't agree. He's a bit of a purist, but he sees the most minor imperfections. But I think for the average, average Joe, I just want to get some ruined arches and stuff on the table, a few bits and pieces. But again, it's all about, for some people are like, they want it to look perfect, and that's what part of the hobby is about. You want your miniature to look beautiful. You want the paint job. John, you should talk about this because I don't paint, but I'll go and buy something painted off eBay. So I take the shortcut.
I just had to in. So for my Chaos Knights that I'm working on,
cool.
Somebody designed this. A friend of mine found the file online, bought the file online, and printed it out for me. And the whole. So compared to a Chaos Knight,
wow,
it's pretty big. This one, including all of the armor plates that go over it, I think was a 75-hour print time.
Wow, not surprised. Yeah,
but
it's amazing when you scale it down by 10%. Like I'm doing these walls at the moment, and I scaled it down by 10%, and it almost halved the print time, because it's not just 10%; it's 10% in every direction.
Yep.
And all the infill and everything, so it's quite incredible, the process. Anyway, John should talk about what I'm sure he's been working on, something more fun from a painting perspective.
Yeah, what are your current works in progress?
I think just to quickly kind of, I'm gonna pay Chris a rare compliment here. So like I've been with the company 2.5 years now, maybe coming up 3 years, something like that. And from day one, Chris was like, the future is 3D printing. And I'm like, no, mate. Like 3D printing is like this weird niche hobby. We use it for manufacturing our miniatures in terms of producing the masters and stuff, because we do all our sculpting digitally. But in terms of the kind of the home user, I've never been like, I think it's sort of like Dave says, you know, it's one hobby, but there's the painting hobby, there's the kind of tournament hobby. They're all sort of elements of the same bigger piece that is wargaming and kind of tabletop gaming, but you end up picking your niche. So I've always been very cynical, and you know, I think very cynical is pretty much my defining feature, and Chris will testify to. So he's kind of dragged us, kicking streaming as a company, to this notion of like, oh, 3D printing, and obviously, you know, everything that's going on in the world, Corona has been hellish for all of us. But one of the things it made us do was very quickly have to kind of pivot the company, and very quickly we sort of pivoted our scope team, like, okay guys, it's going to be a bit weird for a while, rather than focus on you know, the next few batches of Fallout and Elder Scrolls miniatures. Let's look at some of the theory ideas we've got, and we had some stuff that we'd done already for resin that we sort of quickly translated into 3D printing. And then, you know, Chris and myself, and to be fair, like Crispy, our kind of scenery wizard and hardline wizard, all came up with these ideas and kicked off. And you know, I don't think I'm ever going to really feel the need to own a 3D printer, but the stuff that they've done is incredible, and I think we've had a really good response. You know, people are really interested, and I think it's, you know, I hate to say it, but Chris has been quite visionary in that there is an audience for it, and it's, you know, it's being supported by a lot of independent companies, like Chris was saying, Fat Dragon. You know, every time you go to a Depthcon, Gen Con, there's companies doing it. The fact that we're doing, you know, these files are the same files that we use for printing our physical masters for mastering resin. It's the same kit, so you're getting, you know, top-end production quality kits that you can then go away and play with. And yeah, you know, I'm funny. I as Chris says, I'm a perfectionist. I guess that's why I'm this studio head, for the sake of argument, is I get to spot all the little flaws and go, no, that's unacceptable. But you know, when you're at the kind of hobbyist level, you know, you see what the guy's doing. It is incredible, and you know, I guess Chris is right. We'd be stupid not to take advantage of it. So that's been really exciting. So there you go, Chris. That's me plugging you. I'm done. No, I can't wait for stuff to get hold of some of these kits. Like when we, because the intent is hopefully eventually we will produce these as proper resin kits. I cannot wait to get my hands on the Red Rocket kit. I just don't have. I think we've got a friend Ken out in the States, and I think he's worked out between his 2 3D printers, it's going to take him a week, 24 hours a day, to do the entirety of the Red Rocket. I was like, yeah, I'd rather just buy it off the shelf. I'm old fashioned. Like, I ain't got time. You don't have to paint the damn thing. I'd rather just buy it off the shelf and build it. So in terms of the painting side, which I have been doing, you know, not having to commute has really helped. I've really managed to get some time in on the painting, so I get to do an hour in the morning and a couple of hours at night, which is fantastic. Been working on a whole bunch of goblins, but in terms of Modiphius stuff, I've finally got around to doing some more work on some painting guides. So I did the painting guides in the Fallout rulebook, and then we did another one online. And I've always wanted to do more, because I think, you know, I've been painting 26, 27 years now, and I love it. You know, I spent my whole life doing it. I've made a career out of it, which is fantastic. But I know it's it can be such a tricky thing to get into, and a lot of people don't enjoy painting, and they find painting, you know, pain or hard work or unfun. And I think one of the things I'm always trying to do is, there's different levels of painting for different people, and it's about finding what your kind of need is and your niche. And that first period of time is the hardest period, because it's so alien and it's so new. And some people just walk into it and are, you know, overnight geniuses, and you go, oh, good for you. A lot of us have to kind of learn the path up. And so that's kind of what the painting guides are about, really. It's about teaching people the core mechanics, the core fundamental elements of painting. And once you've got those down, everything after that is what I call showing off. So it's like, once you can do the basics, you can paint anything, and then you're like, oh, how do I make this look clever? What cheeky things can I kind of learn along the way? And we recruited a whole bunch of developers. It's been just over a year now, 1.5 years, to help us with Elder Scrolls, kind of push it over the line. And one of the first things I did with them is they were all hobbyists, but none of them were, you know, super happy painters, super comfortable painters. You know,
not happy. See, we're all about happy painting.
Right. There you go. It's the name of the show, right? Like, so I was kind of really trying to get them to the point of, like, the first lesson you've got to learn is how to get paint out of a pot onto a palette and onto a model smoothly and cleanly. And that really is the most important thing. And once you can do that, you literally can do anything, you know, hyperbolic, but you know what I mean. So that's kind of, yeah, that's where I'm coming at with these painting guides, is show you the stage by stage. And it's kind of a bit tricky because it's, you know, there's the kind of the classic draw a circle, now it's an owl. And you do get that with painting guides, right? You know, paint it blue, put the wash on it. Now it's a studio model, so it's trying not to do that. Really, really upsetting. You know, I like I say, 26 years ago, I got the red heavy metal book, and you go through, and it's like stage 1, base coat, stage 2, wash, stage 3, heavy metal model, and you're like, I think there's a 4, 5, and 6 that got missed somewhere along the way. How did that happen? Let's try not to do that. So yeah, that's kind of that. And you know, the other thing I do, one of the bits that is enjoyable is I tend to get first or second copies of the models, and I do a lot of test fitting to make sure they're ready for manufacturing. So yeah, one of the crazy things, I think, you know, some people may know this, some people don't. One of the crazy things about this industry is we tend to be working 1, 2, 3 years ahead of where the release schedule is. So I'm getting Wave 2 Elder Scrolls, and obviously we've been impacted by Corona, and Wave 1 is behind where we wanted it to be. But you know, nonetheless, Wave 1 is now starting to roll out, and that's old news for me. I'm like, oh, I don't even look at that anymore. That's in a box on the shelf somewhere. Now I'm on to Wave 2. So I've been building all the models, test fitting, making sure they're ready for production, and we've actually pushed back. We've decided to go back to the sculpts and change a few things on one of the kits because it was fine, but it was like, myself and our chief factory, Martin, the guy that runs our factory, does a lot of the mastering and casting for us. We both kind of put this model together. We're like, yeah, that really wasn't fun. And one of the things I think is quite important is it's got to be fun. The process has got to be fun. So, you know, if I'm sitting there going, I really want to pillar this model into the deck, infuriating me, that's not the for a new hobbyist or an inexperienced hobbyist, or even you know, me, 26 years, and I'm like, I'm having a miserable time with this freaking model. So that's been quite exciting. And yeah, you know, keep an eye out. Maybe I'll wave something in front of the camera really quickly. So yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, those painting guides sound really cool. I think that's, Dave, I feel like that's like your mantra, is learn how to paint cleanly first, and then you can kind of, as you said, the world is your oyster in terms of learning technique and
build from there.
Like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Real quick, I just wanted to say a shout out to our friends in the chat who have been there for a little while now. So hi to Michael, hi to Bishop, hello Mark, hello to Byron, Cat Swift, our dear friend, Chris. Kat does say, what a visual, a bunch of hobby elves working in the back of the bedroom.
Hobby elves, how Chris describes his style.
And then we also have a friend from Twitch, 3D printing for games is so exciting. Patreon is so good for it.
Yeah. And I keep trying not to let our sculpt team become aware of the fact they can make money on Patreon. I'm like, don't look at Patreon, guys. You don't need to know. You're good with us, right?
You're like, this is the best deal with us.
Yeah. Guaranteed.
Also,
right?
We have another friend from YouTube as well who has an awesome name, and I'm not going to attempt to pronounce it.
I played in a role-playing game at a Polish gaming convention called 𝙂𝙖𝙢𝙞𝙣𝙬, and we were all magic users in Amsterdam looking for something, and we all had spells which were really funny Polish sayings. So we had to cast the spell, we had to read this little strip of paper which was in Polish, and do this awful impersonation of someone who knows how to speak Polish. And so of course everyone laughs.
Because I would totally said, would you get to phone a friend? Because I have friends who could definitely, every time I wanted to hear a spell, just like, hold on, real quick.
Yeah. And we were all awful, so everyone thought it was really funny, but it was a great idea.
Yep. Also, real quick, hello to Moonshriek, who is tuning in from Sweden. That is awesome.
Cool.
Farther into the night than our dear friends in the UK. So as you guys had sort of mentioned, some of the projects that you're working on in terms of Modiphius is the Elder Scrolls project. So that has been released.
Yes, it's because of lockdown. It's had this interesting release, which is basically whenever it gets there. So normally you'd obviously have a street date and everyone gets their stock and all the distributors make sure the retailers have their boxes ready to go on the Friday or whatever day, and then it comes out. But with lockdown, we've still got stores just opening up in the UK, maybe on Monday or whenever they can. We've still got distributors just getting stock. In America, obviously there's gradual stages of lockdown or not lockdown. So it's going to be one of those launches that's, I think, kind of spread out over the next 6 weeks. And as a result, we pushed back the next releases till August, just to pretty much give everyone a chance to get open and just have a chance to sell the first sets before we dump another load of stuff on them. And then we've actually pushed everything back and stretched it out so it's not such a heavy release schedule. So, because we don't want stores to be overloaded with new releases, and they maybe they're just getting their customer base going. People are, it's going to be harder for them to see as many customers in stores. So it's all this like logistical craziness. It's, in a weird way, it's not the ideal time to launch this massive new game, but there's a huge demand for games. And the great thing with Elder Scrolls is you can play it solo and co-op.
Oh, awesome.
So it is a great game for lockdown.
Very cool. Can you tell us just a little bit more about sort of how you got the Elder Scrolls IP and that conversation?
Sure. So a long time ago, I designed T-shirts and had a company called Joystick Junkies. So we used to do lots of cool graphic T-shirts based on video games. And I used to talk to the Bethesda team about, wouldn't it be great to do some Fallout T-shirts and Elder Scrolls T-shirts and stuff like that? And when I started Modiphius in 2013, I don't know, a couple of years later, I was like, oh yeah, I should use those contacts. So I got in touch with Bethesda and basically went, so what do you reckon, Fallout Warhammer? And they were like, sure. And so, and then like about 2 years later, we finally signed a contract, and it took a long time. But they're a huge company and we're nobody. I mean, they kind of knew me, but they didn't know anything about our business, and it takes ages. But yeah, so cut long story short, we got the deal and got this Fallout game together, and then followed that up with Elder Scrolls. And I've been a solo wargamer ever since I was a kid. So and also tried to build in stories into the games I've played. And I'm anything but the person who goes, let's play 300 points each. I go, wouldn't it be really cool if you had loads of tanks and I just had these few guys trying to hold the road over here? Because that would be really interesting. So I like that, the story that plays out on the battlefield. But so I think what I've tried to do with the game is go, let's make something that tells a story, but you can play a game on your own is just as challenging and as fun as a game with your friends. And that's actually worked to advantage, because suddenly everyone's stuck at home and they need to be able to play solo games and maybe co-op games with their friends. So it's been quite a journey and challenging, because it's such a big property and there's obviously so much to choose from, and with both games there's obviously very passionate fan base that, why aren't you making this particular thing that I really, really like and I've loved for 27 years, and you're trash if you don't make it within the next 2 weeks. So, which we're all very aware of. But it's great because there's a passionate fan base that want to buy stuff, and we've had a great team that we try and do stuff that people enjoy, and the sculpting team are all mad for it. Elder Scrolls and Fallout fans, so they've done an amazing job bringing the world to life. And a good example is that every sculpt you do has to go through detailed approval with the art team at Bethesda, and this is the guys who've been living and breathing Fallout and Elder Scrolls for years, and they have very high expectations. And I don't know, we've probably done, John, maybe 600, 800 sculpts.
Yeah.
Now, and there's probably been 5 where they've gone.
2.
Yeah.
It's 2 models.
Yeah, like
I
the.
What they are as well.
Oh, there you go.
It's the Sentry Bot head. Yeah, slightly changed that, and then the which we've never revealed, promo figure with the super sledge. They pushed.
Oh
back.
Yes.
Yeah, I think those are the only 2 models they've ever pushed back on.
Yeah, because
Wow.
one, it was the guy's girlfriend, and he just had some comments about what she should look like. And then the robot, actually, the Sentry Bot, the guy couldn't actually believe that we'd made it in such detail, so small. But the head was really important. The head was really part of the character, and we'd kind of built it into the model, and he wanted it to be an actual separate piece. We were like, sure. So, we know Todd Howard's got a whole set that he's had pro-painted of the models, so that's been really great, and they really trust us. So actually the sculpts go through really fast in approvals, and we've kind of won them over and there's most of them are big tabletop gamers anyway, so they just love the stuff, which is brilliant. It just shows if you do a good job and you're passionate about it, then there's all kinds of stuff you can do.
That's awesome. That's very exciting. I know I was reading online that the gameplay of Elder Scrolls is based off of the Fallout
it's
model.
kind of son of or daughter of Fallout. or lost niece. So we took Mark Latham, so it's 2 different designers. Mark Latham, he worked on Walking Dead for Mantic, and lots of other games, so we got him involved, and he took the core mechanics. So there's a 20-sided skill dice and some colored dice that are used for weapon effects, and change those dice all to D6s from D12s, and pretty much the core mechanics are there. But of course, Elder Scrolls is, some of the key things are your endurance, your magicka, and your health, as opposed to whereas Fallout there's the VATs, which is really interesting, and we had to how we integrate VATs in the game without turning it into a really complex game about one person. It had to be about we want a whole crew of people potentially using VATs. So both games have to do things in a different way. So Mark kind of redesigned it. He simplified the AI system a bit, so it's a little bit of an evolution of the system, but still basically does the same thing. And it gives you this fun experience of a battle. I can take the Imperials, John could take the Stormcloaks. I could team up with you, and we could do a co-op group versus the AI. We could fight against the Stormcloaks, try and raid their camp. So we've, it's got a lot of modes, and there's a lot of things we're expanding on through the year. So we've got a whole kind of solo co-op settlement building quest, epic quest campaign coming later this year, and there'll be other kind of big expansions that kind of grow the game. So we tend to add lots of little modules. So Fallout's a good example. It's getting this a little module that lets you randomize the wasteland, and it's getting another module that lets you actually build your own settlement, and maybe it will get attacked, and you can develop your crew's stats and abilities, and you can use them, you don't have to use them. There's a kind of core experience. So the great thing is people who know Fallout are going to go, oh yeah, I get this is the sort of pretty much the same mechanics, and then there's a few extra little things.
That's awesome. Quick question. Did you and Chris have anything to do with, John, have anything to do with the John Carter minis?
Yeah, that was all Chris. That was before my time, I'm afraid.
Yeah, it was actually, it was actually. It was the same sculpting team. Actually, I think it was, I think it was as the sort of sculpting team, most of them kind of went full time for us. It was the first kind of really big project we launched them into, and it was, everything was epic, mental, swashbuckling poses. So, you got John Carter leaping off a rock. So kind of those classic mental poses. But yeah, they're great fun.
That's awesome. So what would someone get in the core box if they got it from their game store today?
So we went, whereas Fallout had this whole starter box with miniatures in, with Elder Scrolls, we wanted to make it a bit more accessible. So the rules box, or what we call the cool rule box, has the complete rule set in it, has a whole campaign and solo missions. It has the dice and counters and the cards that you need for the launch wave of sets. And there's three sets of miniatures that you can get separately. So the great thing is you could just buy the core rule box that's I think it's $45, £35, and just use it with your Warhammer figures or your any other fantasy figures that you got lying around, and just kind of figure out whether this is something that you want to collect. Alternatively, you could go, well, I'll get the core rule box. Hey, John, you get the I'll get the Imperials. John, why don't you get the Stormcloaks? And then we'll also get there's a Bleak Falls Barrow set. So there's basically two main factions, the Stormcloaks and the Imperials that everyone will know from Skyrim. So you get 2 heroes and 3 what we call follower soldiers. And then there's the Bleak Falls Barrow set, which is where you get the female Dragonborn, and you get 7 Draugr as well. So 3 skeleton archers, 3 Draugr warriors, and a Draugr Deathlord or Overlord, Draugr Overlord. So that's like so you could just get that one box and play a solo mission of the Dragonborn against the Draugr, or go full hog and get everything. So it meant people, didn't have to go crazy and invest $100 just to start playing the game.
That's really nice. That's nice. I think I tried to grab some of the sets unpainted.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can pull one of them.
So just as a rough number, getting a sort of an understanding, what's a rough number of models that you'd be using in a game, you think?
5 to 10.
Yeah.
5 to 10 aside?
You could just have one hero. I mean, you can do a proper, we call it delve mode, because it could just be you. You could go, I really like Ralof because he's an archer, but you can also have a sword. You can outfit your heroes with weapons. Here we go. That's the Imperial set. So you've got Hadvar, who's basically the Imperial tank in the middle, and then the awesome Imperial mage at the end, who's letting rip with some fire. And then you've got your 3 Imperial soldiers with swords, long swords and shields. And the factions play differently. The Imperials are tough. They've got armor. And then the Stormcloaks, who are tall, big dudes with big swords, are a bit more kind of like glass cannons. They do a lot of damage, but they kind of go down quicker. Okay. So, but as I said, you can literally go. Each of us, all 5 of us, could have a hero each. Okay. And go up against all the Imperials, for example, or all the Draugr, or I could play Ralof on my own against the Imperials or the Draugr, or we could take Imperials versus Stormcloaks. And later on, we're introducing a kind of midway point to turn the Draugr into an actual playable faction. There'll be a download that will kind of give you everything you need.
Okay, cool.
I think it's one of the main kind of arcs I've been on with the company is I guess it's quite funny. Chris also says when he was young he did a lot of solo wargaming. I think I had the same thing where I was into wargaming. A lot of my friends dropped out, moved on to other things. And unlike Chris, instead of developing solo wargaming, I kind of developed into a painter. So I've always kind of focused on my painting. So coming into Modiphius, and then then I kind of moved into becoming a tournament game, and I used to travel. And this when that's what took me to America the first time I went out to the States, was to go play toy soldiers in another country of all things. So coming into Modiphius, like one of the things that again, Chris is this. He's a crazed visionary, and he's like, I've got a mad idea, guys. Like the amount of times Chris will say to you, I've got a mad idea, and you're, brace yourself, guys. And he's kicking and screaming into this future that he's determined to make happen. And so this solo wargaming thing, the first time I said, imagine wargames, but you don't need an opponent. I was like, okay, sure, what? So, and this kind of co-op solo narrative adventure. Like I think that's one of the interesting things. Like we make miniatures games, and you can play them as war games, and I very much play them as traditional war games, PvP. I've got an army, you've got an army, we fight. But actually, that's kind of the baseline of the experience. And I know James Sheehan did a huge amount of work on this with Fallout. and obviously Mark's taken that with his evolution for Elder Scrolls. But it really is the defining feature of the games we make, and the defining feature of Chris really is our kind of glorious leader, is this thing of like, the idea of this game is you can get together with your friends and actually play cooperatively. And I think, as you know, as much as it was quite alien to me in all honesty at first, what's really good about it and what's interesting is, you know, the older and uglier I get, the idea of like PvP becomes less and less attractive. So my girlfriend and I, we recently played the entirety of the Silver Towers campaign, the Warhammer Quest Silver Towers campaign, with two friends who was locally our friend John and his partner Joe. And it was just really nice to have a miniatures experience and do all the things that you enjoy with miniatures, you know, rolling dice, pushing toys around. But we won and lost together rather than, because I sort of, you know, again, after, you know, I played competitive War Machine for nearly a decade, and I sort of have this joke, and, you know, Chris has heard this joke, but it's like, you know, you go to the wargaming table as two people, and one of you has a good time and the other one loses. That's not, you know, very cynical. And it's not, like, I've had amazing games where I've lost one, who cares? But it's that thing of when you're in a competitive setting, when you're playing that kind of that cutting edge of competitive gaming, it can be quite one-sided enjoyment. And so the idea of like, well, actually, we're going to play a war game, we're going to punch some skeletons in the face, but we're going to do it together, is kind of cool. Now, nonetheless, I'm really excited for playing Dragons as a playable faction. I was adamant they were going to be a playable faction, and the fact they're not in the first wave upsets me greatly, because I think like undead is cool, right? They're just weird zombie skeleton men and women. So I'm, you know, I can't wait to get that force on the table. And, you know, there are some skeletons over my shoulder up in that cabinet, some of the first wave skeleton archers. But it's really, you know, to the point of frustration sometimes, where Chris is like, right, here's the 20 things that have to go in this core box. And you're like, the box is this deep and has 100 cards in it.
John,
how?
John was able to dial me back a bit. You know, I did want a lot more in that box, but it made sense because we've got it at a decent price. But
and
we have this joke about,
sorry, like that will come in time. So one of the things we did with Fallout is everything went into Fallout, and now we've added even more to Fallout through the expansions. That will all happen with Elder Scrolls as well. It's just going to take a bit of time, because I think the risk is, if you try and put too much in early doors, you risk watering down the experience. So we focused on, you know, AI had to go in the box. Like Chris, you get AI in Chris's games or you don't play them. It's as simple as that. So he was like, AI goes in that box. We're like, okay, cool, AI in the box. And the Delve mode, which is that kind of solo co-op, like it's weird. It's not a role-playing game, but we're trying everything we can to crowbar it into role-play game territory, I think is a fair description. Would you say, boss?
Yeah, good idea. It's basically a miniatures role-playing game. You know, we have this kind of term adventure war games that we band around a lot. That is where it's telling a story and you're going on adventure. John has his joke, which is the frog in the well, which is the whole thing about narrative games. Of course, whenever I think any of us play a war game, you kind of imagine your guys and why they're there, and you know, and there's the unit that gets almost cut down, and you're like, yes, they just managed to hold the line and save, and so in your head you are playing out a narrative. But I've always wanted to build a narrative into the mechanics and into the gameplay, such that you would want to lose the battle because you would learn the next part of your story, and that winning or losing is not the important thing. It's the fact that your story progressed, and that actually came out. I mean, I'll give you an example. Actually, is what I'm working on at the moment for Elder Scrolls, which is this settlement building campaign. So in the story, your character turns up, and it's going to be done in a kind of, you know, paragraph quest book. When certain things happen, you'll look to turn to a section. But, you know, the kind of basically the first mission is you turn up, you've been hired to protect this traveler to go to a village, and you get there, and of course it's being attacked by bandits and the place is burning down. And
of course,
yeah, of course. Typical. How many films have opened with that scene? So, you know, the person you're escorting goes running off, and you're like, oh God. So, you know, you start helping the villagers and fighting off the bandits. So there's a few turns of that, and there's a trigger at which point she comes running back to you and says, oh, she's, you know, I'm paraphrasing that, you know, she's in there, your sister. So now you know that what your sister, and you didn't know where you came from before, is in this burning building. So if you get into, you can just keep playing the battle and just win or lose. But if you go into the building, of course, you find something terrible, and and the rules will change at that point. And for example, it might be that you get if you find a dead body, you then get a modifier that makes it work, stops you hitting as well for the rest of that battle. But you get an extra black damage dice because in your fury and rage you want to take it out on the bandits. So it's little things that can influence the rules. But and this is the example of the frog in the well. It's the reason to go over there is there's a frog in the well that you need to get out of the well. You don't have to, but it will, and the story will go a slightly different path at the end of the battle. And it's what from my kind of fashion background, I love trying mad new things, and you've often got to push against the grain and what people are used to. And I like trying to, and I don't mind making mistakes, and I don't pretend that we'll get it right with every product, but we're trying to push that boundary of like what could be a war game, a miniatures game, and where could we take you on a journey? Because board games are doing it really well. There's some really fantastic narrative board games that have these deep, engaging storylines with branching paths, and I'm convinced that you can do that with a miniatures game as well, and particularly make it a fun experience for like 2 or more people on the same side, so that we can each be playing a character, or we could each be playing a wing of an army, and there's a story unfolding for us. So it's something. I mean, I'm working on ideas for a mass battles narrative AI madness. It's, John would probably pull his hair out if he saw the notes for it at the moment. But one day it will settle into something that makes sense. But I love the fact, of course, I've got a games company, so I can push the bar a bit, and I think it's more fun doing that, trying to do something new than just doing the same old, because there's lots of people who do that really well already. There's no point trying to compete.
No, totally. I love that idea of the crossover of the sort of RPG storytelling, maybe a little bit of board game aspect. Even Kat said, like, the idea of the fact that it's not the winning or losing, but rather the advancement of the story is as you said, sort of a unique way to look at wargaming, and is honestly very refreshing. As someone who doesn't always want to play a war game, storytelling sounds very interesting to me.
I think that's another thing is, as John said, it's the classic thing is 2 people play a war game, 1 walks away happy. Wouldn't it be great if it didn't matter? I mean, most people, I think, a lot of people who play war games, of course, you just enjoy the fact that you got to get your soldiers out and the toys out on the table, looked amazing, the scenery looked really cool, and you got to show off your painted figures, and oh crap, I lost, But the more enjoyable we can make losing, the more people will want to play. And I think, some people, obviously, there are all sorts of groups all over the world, and some people have got the one person who's super competitive and wants to win every game, and the other person doesn't really care about the points and the scenario and just wants to have a fun game, and trying to create that situation where it doesn't matter because everyone will have a really good, good experience. So it's not easy, but it's fun trying.
I think it's been really exciting to see how many to see so much of the cooperative idea come from RPGs and be brought into miniature war games or miniature gaming, miniature based gaming, and that sort of thing. But one of the things that when you were talking about the super competitive person, so in my house, I have 2 daughters, Emily and Lucy. My wife doesn't really play; she's not really interested in playing games at all. So that means I get to play with Emily and Lucy. Lucy is 8, and she is super competitive. Even to the point where in a co-op, she doesn't quite get cooperative games yet. She's got to win. She's got to do the thing that makes the winning happen. So it's a lot of fun to mess around with that kind of stuff and say, well, maybe if you do this instead, we can all survive through to the end of the game.
Yeah.
But no, definitely cool.
That's awesome. And so this is a question, I guess, more for John. When you're in the process of developing sculpts for the game, like what is sort of the process that happens that from digital file to miniature?
I mean, we're sort of lucky in some respects in that Bethesda did a lot of the heavy lifting for us. So, which is not to say we don't make our own models. So some, I've done a lot of the work I did earlier on was on SmackDown Cthulhu stuff, and the thing that Chris has sort of spoken about there, but we've not explicitly defined, is there is a new IP that's been bubbling in Chris's brain for many a year, and we're just starting to touch base on that. So that's where we'll have to do the heavy lifting. But with Elder Scrolls and Fallout, Bethesda's done some of the hard work because they've already envisioned this stuff and they've already digitally sculpted the computer files. So what we'll do is certainly the early days. I think hopefully, Chris, this isn't wrong to say. It was very really cool. So the guys just went, what's cool? And I know Chris did this huge poll and loads of people reacted. It was like, what are the things you want to see in Fallout? And they picked some of the obvious choices. The major factors: your Brother Steel, Super Mutant, Survivors. Perfect, sensible. And originally, this was before the game was even being written. Essentially, it was just make stuff that looks cool. Get a Brother of Steel guy, give him a gun. Great, happy days. Where we're at now is because the game is starting to bed in and mature, and I've got my vision of where I'd like it to go, and then we kind of negotiate with various parties to kind of decide. Let's say we've gone right. We are going to make a new box of models for the Gunners. I say that apropos of nothing, not because I've been banging on about the Gunners for the last 2 years, and they're just out of sculpting now and look amazing. Totally not doing that. So the first thing I'll do is I'll dive into the game and I'll play around in the game and have a look and see what are the Gunners do, what do they look like, are there any key characters? I'll use the online wikis, source material from the books, all sorts of things, and just kind of put together a PDF document of who are the faction I'm looking at, the characters I'm looking at, or the creature I'm looking at. Visual references. We use the art book quite a lot, as well as in-game assets. So we'll pull the files. So we've got a digital, the in-game textured model. We've got the art assets from the art book if there are any. Some screenshots from the game. And so that's kind of the jumping off point. We go, okay, cool, we're going to make the Gunners. So then we go, right, who do we want from the Gunners? So I go through and I look at key moments in the game, or key encounters or characters, and we always have that mix of named characters that you'll know from the game, and then generic characters, so you can either build your own characters out of them, or if you want the nameless grunt backups. So there are 2 Gunners boxes. One is very character driven, the other one is more generic. So the character driven one is the Conquerors of Quincy. So Quincy is the battlefield where the Minutemen are pretty much defeated. And Bishop makes a very good point. Hancock absolutely has a weapon from the art book, not from the game. He does indeed. So Quincy is where the Minutemen are defeated, and where Preston Garvey and the survivors that you meet are essentially exiled from or banished from because they lose the fight. So I was, who are the characters are in and around that? What's the environment? So we've got Baker with his missile launcher, or Fat Man. We've got, oh goodness me, my brain has just completely blanked on the names. Guy with the cowboy hat and the woman in the suit of power armor. And I apologize, my brain completely blanked their names despite looking at them for the last 3 weeks. So we identify, right, who are the key bits from that? And we look at what do they wear in the game. And obviously one of the tricky things, if you look at Hammer's a really good example. One of the funny features of Hammer is that Hammer uses a super sledge. Our version of Hammer has a sledgehammer. And that's because of the levels. So depending on what level you're at, the equipment that the enemies have differs. Sometimes they'll look different. The game will generate them different armor, different mustaches, who knows. So that can be quite fun because you're trying to work out what's the version of that character that most people are going to be able to look at and go, oh, that's Baker. He's got his hat on. He's got a missile launcher. I know who that is. So we identify with that, and I put together a big document. and send it off to the sculptor saying, here's all the game assets, and then what they'll do is they'll also take 3D assets and put it into the sculpting programs to have a look at. Here's some photo reference or some art reference of poses that we want to look at. We want Baker have his missile drop on his shoulder, so we start looking at people carrying RPGs, things like that. You Google some very strange things in this line of work, trust me. And the other thing we do is the bases. So one of the things that Chris, again, being Chris and being I'm going to do it differently, damn it, and you're going to come with me or you're not going to come at all. So all of our models come with fully sculpted, all of our resin models, let's make that clear, come with fully sculpted 3D bases, each of which is unique. So every single model we've done is not only a unique model, but it also then has a unique base. And trust me, coming up with new ideas for bases can be quite difficult at times. But that's why, again, we use the game assets and we look at the environment. So the Conquerors of Quincy is a really good example. When you encounter Baker, he's up in the church tower. So one of the things I did with that one was he's posed with his foot up on a bell, as if he's, the bell has fallen out of the tower, and he sort of props his foot up on it and is bracing with the missile launcher. So you take elements from the game, and I always have a look at what's the equipment they carry, and if it's something really like not a weapon or some obscure, piece of gear that you'd normally loot off their body when you've inevitably killed them, I'll try and weave that into the base, or try and tell the story of the base. And some of the guys like James Barry did some sculpts back in the day for us and stuff, some briefs. We always try and tell a bit of the story. So if you really know your Fallout and you have a look at the base, or you really know your Elder Scrolls and you look at the bases, you'll see something, you'll be like, oh, I know why that's there. That's a cute little Easter egg nod to the character. So that's really exciting, because it's like, it sort of shows our knowledge and passion for these games, and it kind of clues the super fans in as to oh, that's really cute, that's that bell is the bell thing. So that then all goes off to the sculptors, and they look at it, and they're very good. They normally don't come back to me with any major questions, but there might be a bit of back and forth. I know we had a recent one with Domingo. He's been doing a new bunch of protectrons for us, and he was like, oh, I think we can do a bit more with the poses, and so he pushed me a little bit to do some new poses, and we've got some really nice protectrons out of it now, and we're having fun. Like, it's kind of escalated to the point where we're now like, what if we did a robot with a chef hat on, and what if we did a bunch of balloons? So we're getting a bit silly behind the scenes. The great thing about working digitally is you can kind of do stuff and experiment, and unlike, say, a traditional green stuff model, it's not free, because obviously it's taking them time to do it, but there's not that same risk of like, oh god, I've got to make the putty, I've got to let the putty cure, and now I've got to cut the arm off, because you just go, oh, I don't like that arm, I just digitally remove it, it's gone. It's not a problem anymore. Whereas in the traditional sense, you'd be sawing that arm off and pinning a new brass rod in and sculpting all over the top again. So that's really, like, it really lets us play. And we start with the T-pose, which is anyone who's done any digital sculpting for animation or film or computer games kind of knows it's the model's literally stood like that.
Dave is showcasing for us what a T-pose.
All that lets us do is make sure we're happy with the detail, are we happy with the costume and everything before you get into posing. Because obviously if you've gone 3/4 of the way down the journey and you suddenly go, I really don't like his hat. Hat's a bad example because that's quite easy to fix. I really don't like his coat. All of a sudden you've got to undo all that posing and put the arms all back and stuff. So we do the neutral pose. That normally takes 2-3 days depending, and then it goes into the pose. One thing that a lot of people thought early doors that I will always maintain, I will always explain this to people, because I think it accidentally does a disservice to our 3D sculptors. So a lot of people go, oh, it's a computer game, so you just take the asset out of the game and use that as your model. And no is the simple answer. You cannot, because of the way assets are optimized in computer games. They are very, very, very low polygon count. So a polygon is the triangle, many triangles build up a digital model. Because of course your computer has to manipulate them, and they're all moving around and doing all sorts of exciting things. So the more polys, the more your computer grinds, the more it slows down and goes horribly wrong. So if you take an asset from a game, and it's quite funny, you see a lot of people maybe getting hold of those assets in 3D printing, shall we say, and you can always tell it's an in-game asset because it lacks many of the details that are part of the finished thing, because those details don't exist in the sculpt. They exist on the texture, which is a 2-dimensional JPEG image that's pasted onto the 3D asset to make it. It's very clever. It's all technical. So you won't have huge amounts of details. You'll have like a an approximation of the shape, and then the text on top of that and does all the clever, blinking lights and whatever. So we cannot use those because we'd be putting out. They just look sort of melted. If you imagine if you made like a jelly mold of an asset and left it out in the sun too long, that's kind of what the models look like. So everything we do, the guys sculpt from the ground up, completely from scratch. What we do use those assets for is as I've sort of said, we use them for reference for textures and stuff, but also size. So it's really helpful. We got a bit of flack early doors because people were saying, "Oh, the behemoth is his shopping cart on his back is massive. What do you think it is?" Totally wrong. And that is actually scaled to how it is in the game. And there's all sorts of technical reasons why, but that is true to the game because we took that asset and we got our one and put it against their one and went, yes, they're the same size, great. So I think the reason I do that is to defend the 3D sculptors. Those guys put hours and hours and hours into the most incredible details to the point sometimes you can't even see them, and I tell them off for putting too much time and effort into something that will never appear on the sculpt, which they love me for, trust me. It's so unfair to say, oh, you just took that from the game and printed it. Like, I bet they wish it was that simple. So that then gives us a digital file. That goes off to Bethesda. We send them a nice bunch of renders and 3D rotations of the models and stuff, and they go, yeah, cool, that's great. 99.9% of the time, happy doors, we love it. As we've sort of said before, if there are tweaks, they'll come back to us. We'll change a few things, no worries. And then off the back of that, it gets 3D printed, which is obviously Chris's new baby. We do all our printing in resin because that's the best quality you can get. And we've been working with a company, and their printing is phenomenal. We've been through quite a number of companies over the years, and as 3D printing is improving, that I don't want to discredit the early work, but I look at a wave 1 model, and I look at a wave 4 model. And the quality of that print has, it was already very, very, very good. And now it's flawless. And I'm like, wow, look how good this is. So we then have a 3D print. That goes down to our factory, to Martin. Martin puts it in rubber, 2-part rubber mold. And we pour resin, because we make all our models in resin, because Chris is a visionary and doesn't want to do metal, because that's old news. And then I get a nice big bag of cool resin toys to play with. Some go off to the painters to be painted. I get to build and assemble to make sure the fit works, and then we have cool models for people to play with. So yeah, I think that was all of it. I may have missed a step. Apologies if I did.
That's okay. Dave, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was going to say as well. One of the biggest reasons that I think you wouldn't be able to directly port digital characters from a game to create a miniature is that you're talking in different proportions. Yeah, you're talking. We know there are a lot of companies that do heroic scale models that have much larger hands and heads compared to the miniature size. The proportions are different, and I think even if you're trying to keep things the same proportion, or if you say to a realistic sort of proportion.
It would look weird.
It would look weird, but so you've got to adjust all of those things, and really starting from scratch is obviously going to be the way to go. Yeah,
I mean, you can definitely see it with our weapons. Like, we have to scale up. Like, we consider ourselves 32 mil. Yep. Like, I get into fights with people about scale because I've been around in this scene for a while, and when I started, miniatures were allegedly 28mm, and 28mm heroic was anything but. And we're now in the world of 32 heroic, and I'd argue, GW, I'm a GW player. Their version of what I think they would probably describe it as 32 heroic now is like pushing 40 something. So we go 32 mil. Somewhere between 32 mil realistic and 32 mil heroic. So we have to amp up guns, hands, things like that. I mean, hands are a nightmare. One of the worst things about miniatures is fingers. You can't have splayed fingers because they'll just snap and go, get out of here. So, everyone's got like fists or hands like that. Like, it's always one big plane, and they're amped up ever so slightly. So sometimes it can be quite tricky because you get a render and you look at it and you go, oh, he's got like a comedy foam hand on, what's going on? But of course, what you forget and what's so tricky with digital sculpting is you're seeing it, huge on the screen. It's going to be a 32mm model, it's going to be like yay big, and you don't see that he's got this gigantic foam hand, and actually it's totally in proportion, roughly speaking, anyway. Because once you know, when you're talking percentages of millimeters, it's crazy. Yeah. So yes, absolutely, and I think we go 32 mil. Do we call it heroic? I can't even remember, boss. You tell me. But it's
just 32 mil, I think.
Yeah, it's 32 mil. And it's one of those things, like, again, we got a bit of pushback at early doors with that. And the tricky thing is with, wargaming, everyone's like, oh, well, now my scenery won't be the right size. And it's like, have you ever looked at a wargaming house and compared it to a wargaming figure and gone, who lives in here? Like, tiny people? Like, what is this, wargaming for ants? It's scale is already insane in wargaming. Tanks are tanks are too small, but the guns are too big. It's all crazy anyway. So it's really good because you get to be very bold with the details without being outrageous, and because we have that, like, not super heroic, let's call it. It's heroic, not super heroic. So the guns are chunkier, but they're not, they're not outrageously big. And
not anime big.
Yeah, exactly. And anime, and I like, Infinity make incredible anime-esque figures. Like I got no beef with it at all. But that's not the style we wanted. And I think we found that compromise. And every so often there are bits and pieces where I go, God, I wish that was a bit chunkier. I wish that gun could have been a bit, because the guys are trying so, every so often, like, a 3D print comes in and there'll be like some super beautiful wood grain, but I know that won't come out in the cast because it's so fine that you can see it on the print, but you'll never see it in the miniature, and it's a real shame. But then the alternative is that kind of, we've all seen gaming wood grain, and it is a bit fake, It's kind of, so I'd rather we left the surfaces smooth, and then people can paint the wood grain on if they like. I mean, hand on heart, I think our models are superb. Like the work the guys do, and there's that, that the ability to transition those game assets, and you look at those models, you go, I know exactly who that is. It's
she's one of the characters.
Yeah.
On Archer, There's one of those tricky ones where, do you go with a bowstring or don't you? And we don't, because a bowstring in resin it's like a cat whisker, it would snap. But it's very rare to see a bowstring in wargaming because they are hard work. But if you've got a cat that sheds its whiskers, just super glue that to the end and it'll look stunning. It's really nice. And we've been working with Castle Brush, who are our paint studio now. We've worked with a couple of different painters over the years, and Adam H, our American colleague, he does a lot of painting for our Fallout line. Castle Brush have been doing all the Elder Scrolls stuff for us, and they're just doing a superb job. Like, I'm not a believer in non-metallic metal, but we decided to go that route with the Elder Scrolls line to kind of, it suits the kind of the fantasy-esque nature of it, and I think they're doing really, really good work. So that's been really exciting.
Cool.
We just talked about non-metallic metal, 2 weeks ago?
I think so.
Something? Yeah, and how it's very difficult.
It's one of those things. So, like, obviously Rackham were the company that really brought it into like, they weren't the first. I mean, GW were painting non-metallic back in the days of second edition and Bloody. Rackham really brought it into the kind of the forefront, and I think it's one of those things. It works really, really well for display figures, for studio figures. It's we like it for our photography. On the tabletop, I'm less sold. Like, sometimes you go, it's just a grey model, but I'm nothing if not an opinionated guy who likes to make friends/enemies by being belligerent about paint. So I'll take my licks, but. We chose to go down that route intentionally with Elder Scrolls, and I think it was definitely worth it. Getting some really good results. Lydia,
yeah. We've got a really nice mix of male and female figures, actually. So we even the Draugr, we've got female and male Draugr, I believe, John, and then there's male and female Stormcloaks and Imperial soldiers.
It's one of those things. I think, like. Ironically, it's quite a hot sort of topic at the moment anyway, kind of representation in gaming and stuff, but it is like A, it's drawn from the source material, and you know, B, why the hell not? You know, people want to see themselves represented in gaming, and you know, if you're a cat-headed warrior, guess what? We've got a model that represents you. Happy days. The one thing I will say is where it works against us is it costs more money to sculpt more models. So one of the things we do with a lot of our models is try and get a repose in. So when you've done a sculpt, you can then, you know, change the head, change the details, change the pose, and get a second model out of it. Obviously, with us doing a lot of male and female sculpts, we don't get the benefit of that because, unsurprisingly, the physiology of a male figure is very different to the physiology of a female figure. So we are more than happy to kind of put that extra time, effort, and cost into production, just to make some cool models. And you know, there's all those great larger than life characters from the Bethesda games, both male and female. You know, you choose. You know, it's why we went with the female Dragonborn over the male Dragonborn. We put the male out as the kind of the teaser figure, but you can choose gender at the start of the game. And I think it's, you know, I think it's just, the industry's on a journey, and we very much want to be part of that journey. And I don't think we're at the end of it. I think we're all learning a lot of difficult lessons, and obviously world events right now are proving that. But I think it's important to be, you know, at least trying. And I think, you know, we're never going to be perfect, but we're doing our best. And I hope that is appreciated by the audience. And if not, tell us what we're doing wrong, and we'll try and do it better next time. Because you can only learn by being guided by those who know better.
Yeah. That's awesome. And as you said, you kind of allow people to have the ability to make those choices, which I think is important just in that. We did have a question from the chat. David was asking, is the scale of the Skyrim models the same as Fallout? For some reason, they look a little bigger.
They are both 32 mil. I think the one figure of figures you'll notice, we actually sort of accidentally discovered this ourselves. Like, everyone knew apart from me and Chris. Chris was doing some work with the card. You should probably go and grab one of your castle chunks and do a nice reveal on the stream. The Stormcloaks are larger because they're the northern. Are they Bretons? Oh god, mate! I'm a Fallout guy, not a Skyrim guy. I'm really sorry, an Elder Scrolls guy. So I played Morrowind the year before I went to uni, and I don't want to tell you how long ago I went to uni now because it will just depress me. So, like, the fact I talk about Elder Scrolls 3, not Elder Scrolls 5, tells you how long ago I was playing Elder Scrolls. Yeah, the Stormcloaks are taller, but they are sculpted at the same scale. So it's just they happen to be taller people. That group of people. So yeah, Nord. Thank you.
Yeah. They said Nord.
Yeah, spot on. So yes, they are the same scale. They use the same bases, the same 30 mil, 40 mil, 50 mil circles. So, you know, we often joked, because we do a Star Trek line of miniatures as well, and we often joked about, oh, imagine if there was a Fallout vault that was full of Star Trek cosplayers, what would that look like? And doing a kind of crossover with those two miniatures lines. And in the same way, you know, what if there was a vault full of Tamriel cosplayers that got trapped in, you know, the Fallout world, and they could battle? And the rules are not one-to-one, so you couldn't quite do it that way, but I don't think it would take long to stat out so our awkward adventure there. I'm sure you could stat him out, and he could bring his mighty axe down on some poor Brotherhood of Steel.
and funnily enough, our Star Trek and John Carter miniatures are all the same scale. So there's a famous scene in Fallout 2, I think it is, where you stumble across a bunch of mysterious red-shirted dead people next to a mysterious-looking white shuttlecraft.
So it's canonical. I mean, why wouldn't you at that point?
Yeah,
that's incredible.
So it's all the same scales if people want to do that.
Excellent.
I appreciate some quiz comment. That orc is looking a little green under the gills.
Good.
From Quiz earlier comment as well.
Yeah, that model is the cat's meow. I appreciate the puns. So, Chris, have you brought something for us? Traveled away.
Let's see if this is. So I started off printing. That's very bright.
This piece of keys.
I can actually be a piece of paper. I want to actually hold it up against my hand. If that's
it's marble.
No. Yeah, it looks amazing. That's a piece of vault wall. So then I moved on to, there we go. That is, there we go.
That's Red Rocket.
And,
oh, nice.
So we've got, hold on, let me hold this in the right way. So this is bits of Red Rocket.
Cool.
Which you know, they basically clip together in the same way. There's just a little kind of groove that they slot into.
Oh,
and
wow.
this is actually 80% of the, again, it's white, is crazy here. Let me put the other one on. This is 80% of the actual size. So I printed it off at 100%, which is the actual scale. And it's a bit like, actually, a lot of people who play 10 mil use 6 mil scale buildings because they want the sense of a small town, but they don't need to go in the buildings. They just want to be able to fight over a town, but actually have a town that looks like a town, you know, not like five houses. And for this, I realized that I could print as much as I want to make the space so I can have miniatures, you know, so you can basically print as many of each piece as you need. That's the great thing. It's not like, oh, I only got 10 of these, so I'm stuck. You know, I can print as many corners and walls and stuff. But when I put Nora against the door, and she kind of just comes up to the edge, but it's fine. And I don't want the building to completely take over the table. I want to have lots of rooms and lots of space, and to make it interesting. And so there's that abstract decision you've got to make. But amazing, like I said, you know, a 20% reduction is just a massive difference in material for cost for people and time to get it made. I mean, time is a bit meaningless because you just press go and wake up the next morning and you've probably got what you want. But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, if you make a lot of this stuff, it's going to start adding up in cost. And I'll give you, here's the fun reveal, which this is subject to approval because it's actually in approvals at the moment.
Oh, sorry, boss, I forgot that. Yeah, I still get the damn form as well. I should know.
So yeah, big reveal. So we're making if you've played Skyrim, you know, outside Winterhold, there is a ruined tower. I think it's called the Western Watchtower, and it's got these slumped walls and a little town. You end up fighting a dragon there at some point, and so we thought, well, okay, it would be great. I mean, classic thing is there's lots of ruined forts and towers in Skyrim, so wouldn't it be great to give people the ability to create those, and of course we also plan to make them in resin later on, but the ability to create those in 3D. And so we've spent ages, it's about a month, working on what scale is that castle and what does it look like. So here's a chunk which probably doesn't say much at the moment, but so this is part of, you might remember there's a kind of whole slump, and it's going to start here with a smaller ramp, and then it's going to go along here. So there's a couple of big chunks of wall that the miniatures can move along, and the idea, this is designed so you could just have this kind of on its own. So you've got a rock face, and this is an FDM model, so it's got a flat base, whereas maybe if we were doing it in resin, you'd hollow it out. But that took about 6 hours to print, I think. Okay. And this is 100%. I should have brought a miniature, but you know, this you can always see roughly how big it is. So this is 100%, and then I printed it. Here's its little friend. Oh, hold on, let's come around. All right, so that is the same thing. Let's turn it around the right way.
It's like a mini.
It is. It's like it's his little brother. So that's 80%. But I put, actually, I should point out, so we've also been trying to be clever on this. So the other worry, and the designer, Domingos, was tearing his hair out, figuring out physics of, you know, whether the miniatures would slide down. And then he kind of figured this little clever thing, which you may not be able to see, but there's actually a couple of little raised bricks here, which stop the base sliding down. Simple, right? So then, when I made the small one, of course, those little bricks aren't quite high enough. So this is all like, you know, we were going, wow, actually, this is an amazing prototyping process, because we can go, well, if we wanted to, if we actually want this to be the base scale, you need to make the bricks a bit bigger. But I put 2 miniatures on this, and they were like, that just kind of doesn't quite look right. oh god, now I need to show you all three. So then I went and so here we go. So this is the whole family. It's like the three little bears. Yeah. So kind of the one in the middle is 90%, and I was going to say, originally we were thinking this would be big enough for 2 miniatures to be side by side, but it wasn't, and so really it's just a bit too big for what it is. But the beauty of 3D print is like, screw it, I'm going to print it that big because I want this big massive castle. But I think maybe what we'll do is scale. This will be the kind of 100% scale, and we'll give people some examples, because this actually will fit 2 30mm bases side by side. The miniature next to it, if there's a miniature up on the wall, still looks cool, still looks like it's a wall, and it's good enough. And I've also done the doorway on a tower to get that same effect. Does it look enough like a doorway, or do we look like weird giant figures trying to get into a toy town? So for me, that's probably about right, and we'll obviously show the whole castle made up, give people inspiration. And of course, because I also do 10mm fantasy, so I'm like, ooh, already that's actually big enough for a War Master unit, or so it's all sorts of uses, which is great. And we're planning this whole kit with actually printing a set of stairs and the other 2 parts of this wall, just to see how they look, how do they line up with each other on the table, and then we've got a whole kind of castle worth of bits and pieces. Like there's a tower that will take apparently 30 hours to print. So, but again, I scaled it down by 10%, and it's now 16 hours. How crazy is that? So I'll print that off to see what it's like. So in theory, I can make this whole ruined Western Watchtower as a sort of focal point for my battlefield, or I can build a whole bloody castle and have a lot of fun. Make a whole ruined fortress that I'm going to be defending. And actually, that's quite a good thing, because the big solo quest campaign is going to involve discovering this ruined fort, fighting through the dungeons against the Draugr underneath. Yeah. It will do. It will.
Yeah, big enough dry brush, it'll be fine. Just
smash
it out. That's fine. Bit of smash paint, no worries.
Yeah.
Do the dip and flick.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, one thing
I don't know if that works for terrain.
Spray paint. And yeah, so I do like doing dry brushing and stuff. That's one thing I actually do like painting terrain. So my goal is to paint this and then show it to John, and he'll just nod sagely and not say anything.
I will always be very supportive, no matter, I love talking to people about painting. It's the one time I'm happy, right, Chris? And I think the important thing is don't be a judgmental, nasty person. Everyone is on a journey. I'm nowhere near the greatest painter in the world, far from it. I've been on a weird journey with painting, and I was, for years trying to be a competition painter, and I got to the top of the kind of the journeyman league, I suppose, and then I was right at the bottom of the pro, and I've done competition, and I've never won gold, but I've got some silvers and some bronzes, and I've made first cut Golden Demon and stuff, and so I'm okay, I'm an okay painter, but it's that important thing of oh dear, I'm just reading. Never read the comments.
You saw the thing. John is dying inside. Sorry, that was mine.
Dipping and non-metallic metal. Maybe that's the one time when I'm that judgmental, nasty person. No, far from it. I've got a friend, Norbert, who I think, Dave, you may know Norbert. He's got a dipped army, and it's phenomenal, because it's about what is he trying to achieve. And I think that's the important thing. You always identify, what is your goal? Are you trying to get an army done so you can play games with it? Are you trying to win a Golden Demon? They're 2 different things, and you establish that, and you kind of go, right, what is my goal? And I think whenever I'm talking to people about painting, I try my hardest not to ever, hopefully people come to you to ask for criticism knowing you're going to be critical, but there's a difference between constructive criticism and being a horrible person. So whenever I try and feedback about miniatures, I try and do it in a way that's like, this is great, here's what you could think about you know, exploring, go and do some research, do some experimentation. What you never want to do is go, this is trash, because that's helped no one, and it just makes you a horrible person. And whilst I have the there are rumors about my spikiness, but deep down I'm a nice guy. It's a shell to protect me from a world that scares me. So certainly when it comes to talking to me about painting, that's when you normally get me at my best, and I really, you know, try my best, and I hope have, because I've judged competitions, and I've tried to help people, you know, increase their skills, and I mean, you know, funny enough, I got a great present the other day. A couple of years ago, I did a judging of a competition, and the guy who won, the guy who took, you know, best in show, phenomenal piece. It was absolutely stunning. He's a friend of mine, Glenn, but he had a twig. It was supposed to be like a tree, and it was sort of stuck in the back of the plinth, just sticking up out the back of the model, and it just didn't look that good. And you know, he still won the show, and it was everything else about it was incredible. And I was like, yeah, you know, the one thing that really I think you maybe needed to work more on was this, you know, if it's going to be a tree, make it a tree, make it part of the scene. So there and then he snapped it off in front of me. It was like, it's gone, John, it's not a problem anymore. And then the other day he sent me some miniatures, and I got this bag, and I opened the bag, and there was this twig in it. And I was like, oh my God, it's the tree from this model. Like, this is so that's where I think hopefully people have taken my criticism, and obviously he made it an entertaining joke. And it's like, I've sort of almost forgotten that had even happened. And then, you know, 3 years later, this tree appears in my house, and there's this adorable callback. But you know, like, you know, if people see me at shows, come and show me your miniatures, because looking at miniatures, you know, we all dream. You know, it's this crazy thing. You get into this hobby and you dream about making it your job, because it's one of the, you know, I sort of joke, this is the best hobby no one should ever have, because the hobby comes along and it eats your wallet and it eats all your time. But it gives you the, you know, you get to travel the world and get, you know, meet amazing people, and you know, I think all of us in some way, shape or form work in this industry, and we're quite privileged. Essentially, it is amazing to say I do the thing that I love for a living. So if you see me at a show, come and talk to me, show me your miniatures. And if you just want to say, hey, look at my miniatures, don't criticize, don't critique them, that's fine. If you do want critique, I'm happy to do it. In the same way, I want people to critique my models, because I've plateaued. I'm comfortable, I can, you know, smash models out all day long, but I'm not getting much better. Ironically, my girlfriend, now that we've moved house, and we've got a massive painting area, and she's been painting with me now for a couple of years, and she's basically at the point now where she's a better painter than me. And I've been painting for 26 years, and she's been painting for about 4. And it's like, I'm not angry, because I get to share my passion, and we get to, you know, I get to have cabinets full of cool models, some of which are hers now, not mine. You know, it's amazing to be on that journey, and I have a journey to go on. But you know, like I say, come and talk to me, talk to each other. The way you learn is by sharing, right? I think we could all testify to that. So I think it's really, and be open to critique, and be comfortable that, you know, there is no best painter in the world. Even the greatest painters, you know, I've rubbed shoulders with a few huge names and long to be as good as them, but even they are on a journey. And you look at their work, you know, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, like, your next model is your next best thing. Every model is a learning process. Everything can teach you something. So just be open to that. And I'll stop my motivational speech now.
as Minnie says,
as like an artist, though, I think it's really important to remember that everything you see that's in a portfolio or in an online setting has been cultivated. So you're not seeing everyone's worst minis. You're seeing everyone's best minis. So just having that in the back of your mind, where you're like, man, I really wish I was like this person. Like, they're only putting out all the good stuff all the time. Like, probably not all the time. Probably not as often as you think.
Yeah.
And I think it's sorry.
I was just going to say, I can't remember if I've told the story on the show before or not, but when I first found miniatures and started painting and that sort of thing, I was at college doing graphic design, and I took one of my first painted miniatures that I thought was really good. I was really happy with it. And I took it in and showed it to one of my lecturers, and he looked at it and went, you know, Dave, I thought you could do better than this.
Wow.
I always say that, yeah, from that, when you're talking about critique and being careful about crushing hopes and dreams. I'd like to think that he knew me and that he knew that my reaction was going to be, that's it. I'm going to live my life painting these toy soldiers. I'm going to get a career in toy soldiers.
An entire career based on spite.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but what you said, John, that's kind of our Facebook group online with the Painting Happy Little Minis group. That's kind of like what we try and cultivate, is that everyone's sort of at their different places in their painting journey. And so it's really important to ask questions when you don't know and learn different techniques, be open to learning, and then also be happy that you finished and put a painted miniature on the table, you know?
There's nothing more satisfying than that moment when you paint the rim of your base. Like, that's whenever I get to that point in the model, I just go, right, I do all the rims of my bases black. That's the moment where you go, oh, it's done. And then I look at the pile of shame and go, well, it's the house of shame now, and go, oh, it's not done.
House of opportunity.
House of opportunity. There you go.
Oh, yeah.
On it.
We call that last run around the base the victory lap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's crazy. I was watching because I watch a lot of paint videos. There's all manner of YouTubers and so forth. Like, the internet it's had its problems, don't get me wrong, but like the ability to learn and interact, and like I say, I first came to America to come and play toy soldiers with the privateer crew, and none of that would have happened without doing a podcast and making friends on the internet. Like, it's crazy. There was a podcast that was talking about, like, a lot of people don't do the base of their miniature, they leave it black, and with all the paint scuffs and whatever. Who was saying that? Oh goodness me. It'll come to me in a minute. And I was like, oh my word, like, that's the satisfying moment, that moment when you do that. Like, how can you not do that? Because that's like the defining, accumulation of all of the journey that is painting that miniature. So yeah, basing miniatures, people, it's fun. Basing is cool. Just don't put sticks on the base. If you're going to put a stick, make it good.
And apparently don't paint them red. Like, that was a trend, right, Dave? You were talking.
Painting sticks red?
No, the base is red.
Okay.
Don't paint your bases red. It's not cool anymore.
All of my armies are red. Like, red is it's like I think Dave and I probably went through many of the same experiences with back in the day. Yeah, back in the day, red was a color that nobody could paint. Obviously GW had their red era. Everything they painted was red, and I was coming up in that era, and it was always, red's a really tricky color to paint because the paint's got a weak pigment and you have to do so many layers. So I sort of took it on myself to become the guy that could paint red, and so all my armies now are like, gotta have red armor, gotta have red, just to win out that challenge. Paint has come on a huge amount, and that's kind of here's John's crazy tip. I'll stop talking soon and give everyone else. I'm sorry, I get passionate about paint, but I think people often say, "What's the best paint?" and there is no answer. It's what's the best paint for you. What are you looking to do with your paint? So there's all these amazing tools. We use a lot of Army Painter for the paint demonstration stuff because it's accessible, it's well priced, it's got its quirks, but it's definitely used. And it's got a really good system. It's got the base coat dip or wash and then highlight up. So I use a lot of Army Painter, but I think at this point there's almost no range of paint I don't have at least one pot of somewhere on the desk. And it's about choosing the best bit. So one line might have a really good strong red pigment in its red paint, but actually its yellows are a bit weak. So you use the red paint from that one, and then you take the yellow paint from over here, and you kind of choose those best bits and find what works. So it's really tricky because I just go, buy every single pot of paint you see. Just have my girlfriend and I, we have this this workbench that just goes down the side of one room, and the back of it is just racks and racks and racks of paint, and there's 5 different paint lines on there. And so we're very lucky in that respect. We just grab whatever paint we want, and every show I go to, and I inevitably pick something up and go, here's a new thing to try. So it is tricky when you're coming into the hobby. It can be overwhelming. You're not sure what to go for. There's so much paint out there. But if you just try, pick one pot, pick one Vallejo pot, pick one Privateer Press pot, pick one Foundry pot, if you can get them. Of course, that's the tricky thing as well. And try what's the kind of the paint that works for you. What gels with your paint style. A really good example. I have the Scale 75 paint range. and it's an incredible paint range, and I've seen people do incredible things with it, and it does not work with my style. Like the way I paint, it just like I was doing a piece for Golden Demon. Another fantastic joke in the.
Yeah, do you like that? Before you choose colors and paints, make sure you have red up on.
I think, yeah, that's a round of applause, folks. That's great. Yeah, I started this piece for a competition, and I started doing it with scale 75, and I was just banging my head against the table. And so in the end, I stopped using it and switched to a different paint line. But then other people use it and get these phenomenal results. So there is no one good paint. It's about, depending on the style of painting that you do and the techniques you use, you'll get very different results from different paints. So just, don't commit to anything. Don't go day one, I'm going to buy the mega paint set with 10,000 pots of paint from one manufacturer in it, because you might find if you hate that paint, you've just blown your hobby budget for the rest of the year and not got anything out of it. Pick up a pot here and there. And I think the other thing that's really cool as well is I have what I call Test Elf. So Test Elf is this Paul Wood Elf miniature. There's actually two of them. Sam and I have both got Test Elf now. We've got our own ones. And Test Elf is I'm going to try to come up with a new color scheme, or I just want to test a technique or whatever. Find a bit of Test Elf and you start doing it. So this elf has got, a crimson cloak and a golden face and blue hood and green bow and all these weird bits. And just have a junky old model that's not part of an army and is, just maybe a tester model you've got or something you picked up on a whim that's not important. Try stuff out on that before committing to your main projects. Because
I think we need to get a test elf for our studio when Dave and Gretchen come back in. I love that idea.
I like the idea of test elf.
Because we've had that before on the show where it's like, oh, well, Dave wants to showcase this technique. Oh, but we don't want to paint it on a nice model that we have been working on.
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
I think when we tested out the contrast paints from GW, we went through we had a whole bunch of Stormcast Eternals, and we just painted different sections of them with different colors, painted them around, and it was like, okay, now this red is dry, we'll try the green, and we'll try that. Yeah.
And experiments.
Good idea to have that sort of thing.
Yeah.
They were very colorful, Stormcast. So actually, we are at the end of our show. I know, it's kind of crazy.
We didn't even do the super secret reveal.
Oh, did you want
about Elder Scrolls Wave 2? We'll do this. We'll do this as a goodbye. Tiny, Gavin's going to kill me. Tiny peek.
Okay.
That's really out of focus.
It's okay.
There we go.
Yeah, so thank you guys so much for coming on and just talking a little bit about like how miniatures are made. It's very interesting and something that we don't get privy of because we see the final product in the box. We're unboxing it. So it was really cool to kind of hear the development and even how you make your game and how miniatures come alive into their little resin casts. And if anyone wants to find out more about Modiphius or follow your different projects, where should they go?
To modiphius.net for our main website, or facebook.com/Modiphius and twitter.com/Modiphius, pretty much anywhere. So.
That's awesome.
Chris and I are pretty active in the Fallout Facebook community. Gavin's very active in the Elder Scrolls community. We have got some subreddits. If you jump on Reddit, if you're a Reddit user, I moderate the Fallout one. All the places where people do things. If you look for Modiphius, you'll eventually find us.
And we've got a super friendly 3D print community, Fallout 3D community as well, where everyone's sharing experiences, making their models.
That's awesome. It's very exciting to see the excitement around your new 3D prints and stuff like that. So guys, make sure you go and follow Modiphius, see what they're doing. Check out the Elder Scrolls line that has been coming out and that will be coming out slowly, and more stuff is coming and we can't wait to a sort of slow release, but very exciting. I feel like people will have more time to work on them, right? And I mean, the cool thing is, as you said, is both Fallout and Elder Scrolls, they have the solo modes, so you are able to engage in the system, and then when you get to the table with other people, you'll already know what you're doing, right?
Yeah, totally.
So thank you guys so much for joining our show. People who are watching, make sure you join our Painting Happy Little Minis Facebook group. It's where we post miniatures, ask questions, and just have a good time sharing in the hobby. And a lot of people have been more active lately because they've had a little bit more time. So that's been really fun to see the different stuff. Tune in next week. On next Thursday, we're going to have more of a regular show where we talk more about what people have been painting from in the group. And we will see you all next week. So bye. Thank you, guys.